can you give me like a snapshot or a profile of the business that you feel like these are the right fit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Can you imagine if I couldn't answer that question?
Well, I emailed it to you already, so I gave you, this is a layup question.
No, honestly, it's a great question to know for any business owner though, because a lot of times you try to make yourself fit for everyone. And we did that in the beginning, man. I tried to fit everything into everything, and it just creates a disaster for yourself, but really creates a disaster for the people that don't fit instead of helping them find the right location. So here's exactly what's best for us. Okay. Whether you're a construction subcontractor, a manufacturer, fabrication, whatever industry you're in, making peppers, and you need help executing on growth, new work, and you just don't have access to the capital in your normal operating budget, your normal operating account, cash flows, you don't have access to lines of credit or whatnot, we're a good option. Now, inside of that, if you're a commercial contractor in construction, typically the revenue businesses that we work with are between 2 million-ish, maybe $1.5 million, 2 million, depending on what they're doing or on their way to that, up to as much as $30 or $40 million sometimes. Okay. The sweet spot I would say is probably 2.5 to 15, but with the caveat that they're growing. The $2 million business is moving its way to 3 and 4 or 5 million. The 5 million business is working its way up to 7 or 8 or 9. That 10 million, 11, $12 million business, they're trying to grow to 15 and 20 million. And where the pain points are is in that growth. They have typically the access to cash to get through that. If they could just stay constant at 5 million or stay constant at 10, world's good, right? Well, we all know, and the smartest business owners pay attention to this, you're either growing or dying. There's no such thing as perfectly fine-tuning your revenue model so that you can stay perfectly stagnant. And that is the biggest misconception in business. Get to a certain level and cruise. Doesn't exist, man.
No,
like that is not going to happen. So as you start to grow, though, you encompass those new pain points. Like when you're doing 2 projects and you move to 3, when you're doing, you have 5 customers and all of a sudden you add this 6th or 7th customer on, and that's the one that stresses your manufacturing line, or that's the one that has a different delivery model, and boom, all of a sudden cash gets tight. Taking those opportunities, which are also great opportunities and great for your business once you get into them and they get into the flow. We're great at helping you execute those by providing the capital that you need to get to those to execute them without putting the stress of cash onto the normal operating business. And so you can now grow, and it might cost you a couple percentage points of your margin on those specific customers or opportunities, but you're not impacting your overall business. And so you're not losing sleep at night. You're not like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Oh, I got this great new opportunity like Publix, for example, but now all my customers are suffering because I can't deliver on any of them. And your employees suffer, you suffer, you don't sleep at night, your family struggles. Like all that is sometimes not worth it. And so we're a good option for that. And we're a great option to utilize as a debt instrument versus like, I just need a partner. Let me go bring in some money, and you got to go raise some capital, give up equity in your business. That's permanent. That lasts forever. We're a good option for that. Those are our customers. Those revenue ranges with growth.
This is Duke Mills. I own Work Comp Solutions in Lakeland, Florida. We're the home of Grady Judd, and we are insurance brokers, workers' comp, general liability, and we also do premium recovery. So for those people that have, or they believe they have mistakes on their policies or liability or workers' comp, we go in and look for mistakes, and we just divvy up any money we can get back. So, but today I've got Scott Pieper with me with Mobilization Funding. And before I start asking Scott some questions, I want to talk about how we met. So what I have done, and I want the audience to know, is I built myself a little cheat sheet. So when you see my eyes going to the left or right, whichever way, I'm not reading emails because I'm bored to death with what Scott's saying, or I've heard it 12 times. I'm doing it because I've built this little cheat sheet, right? So anyway, so I want to say it was probably 3-4 months ago, ABC of the Gulf Coast, Building Contractors Association, put together like a subject matter experts on different things, right? And they had a meeting in Tampa, and those people that attended were business executives, presidents of companies, CEOs of companies, pretty much decision makers. It's kind of their executive board. And so lo and behold, Scott, I've never met him, never even heard about him. We're on this little board and just doing a Q&A with all these contractors. And the more he talked about what his company does, I was just absolutely intrigued by it. So, and what it made me think of, and I want to just share this, I'm a storyteller. So I got to share this story because as soon as he was talking and answering questions, and I'm sure he's going to give you an example, but we have a client that produces roasted red peppers and they sell them to grocery stores. And I'm really, really good friends with the family that owns it, a 100-year-old company. Well, they just, they ended up getting an order from Publix where they had only serviced just a very few stores, and Publix came to them and they said, we want all of these peppers, your fried onions, you know, your fried bell peppers and onion in all 1,200 stores. And I remember talking to the owner and he said, it's a good problem to have, but I don't know how we're going to produce. You know, we got to buy the peppers from the growers. You know, we're going to wait at least 90 days on our money. And I said, I got the guy for you. And I introduced him to Scott. So anyway, so that's how we met. I was like I said, I was really intrigued, and I know I have clients that can use his services. But one thing that's different about Scott than me is that I'm 5'4", right? And Scott is taller than Yao Ming. And if you don't remember him, just look him up. He used to play for the Houston Rockets. The guy was massive. And when after this was over with, and they said, let's take a group picture together, I'm like, hell no. And the guy actually had to change the way he had to change from a portrait picture when we were all together to a landscape, because if they did it the other way, you got the top of my head, and of course you got good looking Scott standing there. So anyway, I guess we're getting ready to get started. So let's talk about your company. Tell me how, I want to know how it started, how it began. Was there a brainstorm? How did you get this thing started? Are you did you marry into money, or are you a trust fund baby, or?
Yeah, born on third base, coast my way home, man.
That's right.
No, I wish, but no, that's not the case. Well, first, let's clarify the story. Yao Ming might be 7'4", and the disparity between me and Yao Ming might be the same as you and I, but I'm only 6'5". but thank you for the introduction. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on too, Duke. And I likewise, I found your presentation on the panel and question fascinating. I just have not seen someone become an expert in workers' comp, and let alone be able to help people in the way that you do, with the expertise you do, at the efficiency, but also being able to help them recover from previous years of premium. I just haven't seen that done or executed well. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it done well. And so I, like you, I was very, I was inspired and admired, and I wanted to follow up with you, and I'm glad you reached out. Thank you. To answer your question, Mobilization Funding, I grew up in a small town in upstate New York called Castleton, New York. It's just outside of Albany, just in the foothills of the Catskill Mountains. And my dad was a construction contractor. He owned a glass and aluminum business. He worked in a glass and aluminum business my entire life. And then he actually, like most construction contractors, they get working for someone that they either don't want to work for anymore, or something bad happens, or you watch something just not become a good fit, and they get pushed. And that push forces them into owning their own business. And all of a sudden they go out and own their own business because it was out of necessity, not necessarily a designed perfect plan. And that's what happened with my dad. Now, I had graduated college, or I graduated high school. I was about 1 year into college. My dad called me and said, hey, Scott, I'm starting, I got to go out on my own. This business is not working, and it might not be around long. And so I'm going to, me and his partner, they jumped into it and they started. And so I watched him through my college years and in after my college years, just do what he did, but doing it for himself. But I knew the construction business, or not the business, but I knew the field and the trade because I worked in it. Like when I was growing up, I was in it and around it. So I knew the guys. I knew what it was like to get there in the shop in the morning and grab yourself a cup of coffee, figure out the plan, load the truck, drive out to the site, make sure you have all your stuff. You know, I knew that. So Fast forward, I got into the medical device business. I did not go back to Castleton, New York and take over my dad's business. And I didn't want to be anywhere near Castleton, New York. When I got out of school, I moved straight to Florida. And ever since, I've been here and had a desire to be here. I met my wife down here, and that's how I've been. But how Mobilization Funding started was a friend of mine who I played basketball with called me one day and said, Scott, there's a great idea we have, and I think you'd be perfect for it. I said, okay, great. His name's Chris. We called him Condo. And I said, Condo, the only reason we call him Condo, Duke, in the spirit of stories, is because he happened to buy a condo when we were all living in New York City after school for a brief minute. We were playing basketball every day, and he bought a condo in Hoboken, New York. So we decided to call him Condo. Otherwise, his name's Chris, but that's how his name's Condo. So anyway, Condo calls me and says, I got this great opportunity. We want to start this construction lending business. I met a great guy down in South Carolina that he had recently moved there, and you'd be perfect for it because your dad owned a construction company. I'm like, really? Why would that qualifies me for being perfect for lending? No. Okay. So really, I'd love to tell you some amazing fancy story, but really it was just a good opportunity. I told them that it was insane. There's no reason we should ever do construction lending to commercial subcontractors. It's a crazy business. I don't know anyone that does it or why anyone would, but I'm in. If you guys have fallen into something crazy here, I'm in. So let's do it. So we all made our first loan. We kind of passed the hat, made a small little loan to an electrical contractor. In the true spirit of the world, it went perfect. Everything was great. The second one went great. The third one went great. And then the fourth one went really bad. And that's a whole nother story, but that's how the business started. And it started as a hobby. We quickly realized that this was really something that could help people. It was a real need, and it was going to become our job to figure out how to do it appropriately and correctly, not only to help folks do what they do, but also do it in a way that you could be a responsible lender, help your customer, but also create a program that people could use.
Well, how many years ago was that?
That was 2013. We are in our 11th year.
Okay.
Making loans. Yeah.
Is Chris still around?
Chris is, yes, he's on the earth, but he is not part of Mobilization Funding.
Okay.
He bailed out fairly early. He is in specialty lending. He's just in a different avenue, in a whole entirely different market outside of construction. But Chris was really always part of there was one other gentleman who started it with us that was really the creator of the idea. And it came out of the bonding world. Look, commercial bonding, performance and payment bonds, they need working capital. And in order to get bonded, you had to have working capital. And coming out of 2013 in that downturn, there was not a lot of working capital out there given to construction contractors. The working capital they did have, a lot of them just got significantly hurt going through the recession. And so the folks that were still left were really the best of the best performers. They just didn't have the cash or the access to cash they once had before, with the whole market dynamics and everything changing. So it was a really good opportunity. It just needed to be figured out. And that other gentleman, our original partner, he was there to come up with the idea, and the rest of us were really just kind of raising capital and sort of helping find maybe new opportunities, new customers we could work with. And so Chris eventually left the business, I think probably in 2016 or 17. And then one of the other there was four of us originally. He's still here. His name's Matt. He's still involved in the business, not in the day-to-day, but he's involved in the business and has been a great asset to us.
Wow, that's a good story getting started. And it's funny that you said bonding, because I kept wanting to write the question down, but I wasn't sure. But so I got this crazy buddy of mine. His name's Dan Wagner. Used to ride rodeo, and then he became a rodeo clown. But anyway, I was thinking about, because I've traveled with him before to see his clients, and we share clients together. And I would hear these conversations about the financials. So is the underwriting pretty close to the same as what a bond underwriter would do?
No, not at all. And if anyone knows what bonding underwriting is like, that's like almost a bigger deep dive than audited financials, candidly. I think it's pretty aggressive. It is as intense as it can be. And rightfully so. Look, if someone's going to write a payment and performance bond, basically ensuring the fact that you will not only do the work, but what you will pay for the work. And it's a $5, $10, $15 million job, or even a couple $1 million job. I mean, that's a lot of risk for insurance companies. So they're going to do a deep dive on your financials.
Right.
What we do is we are more we are more focused, Duke, on what the business is doing currently in terms of performing, whatever size you may be. And we focus specifically on commercial construction, not residential, but commercial contracts, whatever size you are, whatever projects you do, whatever range they may be in, that's fine. Doesn't matter what scope of work. Doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer doing roasted red peppers or versions of peppers, like whatever you do, we want to help you do what you do. So what we analyze is we do get bank statements and tax returns and internally prepared financials, but all we're looking for there is we want to get an understanding of your business, the inflows and outflows of cash. How big is your business? How do you manage what you're doing? Who's your suppliers? Things like that. Just the basics. That process takes us like a day and a half to go through. That's it. Like we're not doing this deep, intensive dive.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to get a feel for is where your business is at today. And we use some specific documents from the customers to do that, like I just outlined. And then what we want to do is, what is your opportunity? Like the example you gave. Well, I've been selling to all these stores, but Publix wants to go into 1,200 stores. Okay, that's an awesome opportunity. You're delivering the products you already make. You know exactly what you're doing. You just have to do it at a larger scale. And the implications of doing that are, I don't have the cash to buy more peppers from the farm. I don't have the bottles. I have the supplier for the bottles, but I don't have the cash to buy 10 times the amount of bottling I need, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're able to really look at that, analyze it, and then provide them the working capital they need to execute on that revenue opportunity. That's usually a purchase order or a contract, et cetera.
Yeah, that, it's interesting too, that on this little ABC, there was a banker that was included, if you remember, at the very end.
Yeah, Derek.
And he just said, we will not do what Scott does.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. He said,
not even close.
Is that the truth? They are not interested in this.
No, I mean, a bank, and they'll tell you, and I think he even said this, we're happy to give you $1 million to execute that project, as long as you have a piece of real estate you can give us that's unencumbered, and even then they're going to want to see that you can cash flow the payments and the repayment too. So it's just not what banks do. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they don't know what to do. And what they would tell you is, we don't know how to analyze it. We don't know how to service it. We're not comfortable taking that risk and not knowing what to do, but we are. So why are we? We just get a chance to take care of the customer and understand what they need. And then we design the program to be completely efficient for us and them. In other words, if I just give somebody money and then they have to figure out how to use it, that's not helpful. If they know exactly what they need and they know what they're trying to accomplish, but they may not know exactly how much or when they need it, or what the implications of that's going to be to their revenue cycle, meaning like, if I have this opportunity, if I borrow this money, is it going to hurt me or help me? We analyze all that and show the customer that. And so then they have the opportunity to be able to say, oh, you know what? This is perfect. And I can use that, or I'll tweak this. So they can see, oh, I can borrow the amount of money I need from mobilization funding, for example, or I don't need nearly as much as I thought. That's usually the case. They never need really as much as they thought they need. And you just give it to them exactly where they need it inside that revenue cycle. As they invoice their customer, they can repay the loan, and it costs them a couple percentage points maybe of their margin, so they can execute it without having to raise capital, without bringing in a partner.
It seems, with banks, do you partner with a lot of bankers because here's what it reminds me of. You've got a niche and you stay inside your lane. So if somebody comes to you, unlike a banker, where a banker may be talking to a loan for somebody, just different types of loans, lines of credit, that could be any kind of industry, thousands of them out there. You're so narrowly focused. When somebody brings you something, you've seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
So I don't care who you are, what you're looking for. I mean, you probably can look at it without even having to input it into your system and kind of know.
I can definitely know if it won't work pretty quickly. Yeah.
Right.
And that's why we do that quick analysis for folks. It's really not that quick. We've just refined it. We've done it thousands of times, analyzing those bank statements and stuff. And we can just tell someone where, hey, you're in a great spot. You got this great opportunity. And then we can actually articulate to them, hey, this is what your business is going to feel like when you bolt this new opportunity on. This is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to feel like, and so if someone is really struggling to make payroll every week and they're just cash tight, like why is that? We can show them and tell them why that is. And then we can also show them and tell them how adding this new project will either help or hurt that, and when they can see the help or the hurt happen. And we do that by building this really cool and detailed cash flow experience, so they can see what the cash flow of that project looks like before they have to start. So you don't just get going on it and then you feel like, ooh, this hurts, or ooh, this is great, or what do I do next? Like, you're not you don't have to operate from this position of being like flight, like fear or flight opportunity. You can really like operate from a logical standpoint, look at it. And the coolest part, Duke, we talked about this, but the coolest part is these business owners, when they see that on paper before they start, they're so resilient, man. They know exactly where to go push those buttons because they're used to doing it under intense pressure. So when they can do it proactively, it's the coolest thing on earth. They're like, oh man, I'm just going to go get this from this supplier. I'm going to manage this instead. They make some tweaks. We show them what it looks like, and boom, they go.
I think about it, a lot of the contractors we work with, they're not all big, massive, construction companies that have a high level CFO in there. A lot of them will have, controllers, bookkeepers, even a CPA. Well, I mean, that's fine. They all have a CPA, but, over the years, when you say looking forward, that's one thing I've learned that you take a CFO and then you take the other ones, the CPA, the bookkeeper, the controller, the ones under the CFO, they all look back.
Yeah.
The CFO is looking forward, and not everybody can afford to have somebody like that on staff. And that's what it kind of resonated with me when you're talking about, we're going to look forward. We're going to help you with this. That's important.
Yeah. Because look, man, when we started out, Duke, we made loans, right? That's all we did. We were making loans. And we quickly realized you can make loans, but you're not really helping anybody. You're just giving them some, of course you're helping, you're giving them access to some money. Okay. But are you really helping somebody by giving them money? Sometimes giving somebody money is the worst thing. You actually could kill them by giving them money. Okay. Think about the folks we talked about, like a business. If you're struggling and you don't know why you're struggling, all of a sudden you add money to it. Sometimes that's like pouring gas on a fire, right? So the proactive approach, looking at it, what we realized, and where our company changed and where the loan program changed, when we realized we have to actually help these folks by providing them the information and the tools, and sometimes the education or the access to the education for the things they just don't know. And finance is one of those things that's hard to figure out. They don't teach us this in school.
Hell no. No, I agree 100%.
Most people don't even balance their checkbook or even know how. And so, okay, great. But just because you can't balance your checkbook doesn't mean you don't end up sometimes owning a business.
No.
And you know what? Yeah. And by the time you own the business, you're insecure about the fact that you don't know how to balance your checkbook. So you're never going to ask anybody because you're like, shit, I'm supposed to know that. So if we realize we can help these folks by saying, hey, look, let me build you a cash flow, what it looks like. Let me show you why we can help you with this job, or why we can't, but you shouldn't do it either. Because if we can't help somebody with a project alone, it's usually 99 times out of 100, something they shouldn't do either, because it's going to create a problem. If we can help them, then they can do it, or they might have the access to cash somewhere else, or we can help them make the tweaks. But you made a great point. You talked about CFOs look forward,
right,
and people underneath them look backwards. Right. That's the equivalent of a bank and mobilization funding. The bank's going to look backwards and say, what can you do?
Yep.
What have you done? So therefore, what can you do? And we're going to look forward at what are you capable of doing based on your past performance. But if we can help you on a better project cash flow, on a real trajectory from a finance perspective, what are you capable of doing going forward? And we bolt that on to these businesses with these folks and that education tool, and then give them the access to capital in the most responsible way to do what they want to do. That's the juice, man. And that's why it works so well.
I love it. I absolutely love it. We don't have the time, but boy, what you just said, about people going out and looking for equity and giving up part of their business. I remember we talked about this a while back. You had some kind of math formula for that.
Mm-hmm.
You remember telling me that about if you give up equity, here's what you're really giving up. Can you share?
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example. So I talk about this all the time. Let's just take a business, a $3 million business. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you're going to grow. You have the opportunity to grow to $5 million. Okay. You're going to be a $5 million business. And let's just say that $2 million business is operating at a, just round easy numbers. After all expenses, they're operating at a 10% margin. Okay. Right. So $2 million business, you're going to make 200 grand after net.
Okay.
So a $5 million business, you're going to make 500 grand, right? If you keep the margins the same.
Keep the margins, yeah.
All right, perfect. No problem. Now, if you, to grow from 10 million, or I'm sorry, from 2 million to 5 million, you need, call it $700,000, okay? And you can't get that from a bank. You can't get that from anywhere else because it's just your $2 million business. No one's going to give you 35% leverage on your revenue, on your revenue. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to bring in a partner. I'm going to bring in a partner for 400 grand, or they're going to give me $500,000 and I'm going to give them half my business.
Yeah.
Or maybe 30% of your business. Okay. Yeah. Let's just say it's 25, because that would be a heck of a deal. If you could get 500 grand and give up 25 for a $2 million business, that's never going to happen. But let's just say it did. Well, now when you're the $5 million business and you're making 500 grand, you're only going to get 75% of that. They're going to get 125 grand and you're going to get 375.
Yeah.
Whereas and that's permanent forever. What happens the next year at 5 million? That's another 125. The next million, 125. The next 5 million, 125. You move to 10 million. Now that's $250,000.
Right.
So let's add that up over that 3-year period. Let's just say it's 500 grand that came out of your pocket. Or you could finance that growth, and maybe you need 400 grand. In reality, you need that 400 grand probably 2 or 3 times over a 3-year period, because you need to be able to get those projects going. And you also need to hit the next growth cycle. So let's say you retain the 100% of your business and maybe you give up 2 or 3% of your margin dollars along the way. Well, you're only giving up 2% of your revenue, not 25.
Yeah, I know. It makes, when I heard you talk about that, I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah. And so on that same, on that same $3 million of growth, maybe it cost you 60, 70, 80, maybe it cost you 150 grand. Okay, great. Yeah. Let's just say it costs the same 150 grand. It's only 150 grand once.
What? I know.
It's not, and you keep all the rest of the revenue, the profit in your business. Yeah. And then where we come in is if we can, that's cool from a finance model, right? It makes sense if someone actually goes through the exercise and sees it that way. Yeah. But what if that same person who provided that same lender, us, also gave you new tools to use, so you're even better and you're more efficient, and you operate that way safer in a better economic model. They can ebb and flow with you as you go, because everyone knows it's not a perfect linear line on your way to 5 million. Absolutely. And so that's the way to think about it, versus looking at just a lender and saying, oh, what's your rates? Your rates are X. I'm going to compare that to these rates. That's too much. So I'm just going to go get an equity lender. Well, a raised equity partner. I'm going to say an equity partner is the most expensive form of capital, because when you need them, you're bringing them in at a certain valuation, which is typically lower than what you're trying to get to. And so that's just the things people got to consider.
So if people want to reach you, Scott, tell me how they can find you.
The best ways to link up with us are our YouTube channel, which is Mobilization Funding on YouTube.
Yep.
Our LinkedIn, we're very active on. We're also very active on my own personal LinkedIn, which is Scott Pieper. The LinkedIn for Mobilization Funding is Mobilization Funding. We have a podcast, which you can see right here, called Construction MFers. We have a guest, one episode per week come out, and we talk about all kinds of cool things. I typically am bringing on a guest that's going to talk about, like Duke, you're coming up here at the end of the month, your episode, talking all about workers' comp, right? And how you can help manage workers' comp. I have accountants on there talking about tax planning. We have, we just launched the latest episodes with Kyle Medley, talked about 401k planning as a business owner, as a small business owner. So you can see how those 401k plans can help you not only provide tools for your employees, but also for you. all kinds of cool stuff like that. And then our website, mobilizationfunding.com. We have a ton of resources, great tools. That cash flow tool I talked to you guys about, anybody can go on there and download that.
Those business owners that are listening to this, that's where you're going to get the Scott Pieper story, because he's masterful at telling stories, not just the people he's interviewing, but his website. There's such great stuff out there, a lot of good content, you know. And in fact, you know, when mine comes out, you'll even hear me asking them, you know, how you doing this? And like Scott said, you just got to do it. You just start talking. Who cares?
Yeah. You know, the most important thing is just be yourself. That was the hardest part for me, is like, do people really care about what I have to say? Like, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But if you try to do it some way or try to be somebody you're not exactly, it'll go bad, man. Don't.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. Thank you very much.
No problem, man. You're welcome. Thank you, Duke.
All right, buddy. See ya.